Hey there, welcome to White Women Wake Up. I'm Karen.
And I'm Jonelle.
Each week, one of us brings a topic to the table, something we've been wrestling with, reading about, or noticing in our own lives.
Yes. And the other reacts in real time. No scripts, no prep, just an honest conversation between a mother and daughter spanning generations about what it means to wake up as white women in a world shaped by bias, power, and inherited patterns.
We don't always agree, and it's not always comfortable, but we show up anyway.
Yes, we do.
Let's wake up.
Let's wake up.
Hey.
Hi, Karen.
How are you, Jonelle?
I'm good. It's been an up and down week, but I'm good for the most part. Where are you at?
I would think that you would be really good. You've had some good things happen.
Oh, I've had some great things happen to me.
Yeah.
I also, as you know, the weight of indifference, the crushing weight of indifference, the topic from last week really put me into a space.
Yes.
And I'll talk about a little bit about that in my reflection.
Yeah.
In fact,
And my reflection was going to be your reflection anyways. I was going to say one of the things so Jonelle had a medical procedure done this week. And one of the things that, speak of indifference that I was thinking about or reflecting a lot about on is you were so excited after everything was done because the people, the doctors and the nurses around you just validated you and were so caring. Yeah. There was no sense of indifference to your situation and your pain. And I thought, this is so interesting because just validation alone, you weren't crushed. Yeah. And so that's kind of my reflection too, watching you go through that, like really feeling validated as a human being.
This journey. And the journey isn't over, but this was a big hump in getting the care that I needed that I've been asking for months. So It was a big win. And so thank you.
And maybe I was motivated by doing that episode because when we use that language, it's been crushing for you. Your spirit has really felt crushed. And it is because you have interacted with a lot of indifferent caregivers.
Yeah.
And so I just think that it's such a story about how we all need to walk along on our journeys of caring about other people, that our indifference does hurt others.
Oh, it does.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's also one of the things that's interesting because, like I've been talking a lot about this with my students, is there's so much going on that we can't be hyper vigilant to everything, but we can be present and caring.
Yeah.
That indifference does have a weight. And so sometimes it's just a matter of listening to each other, right? Anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, well, thank you. I'm glad. Thank you. You've been great along this journey. Again, we're still only partially way there, but this was a big hump.
It was a big hump.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
For me, your topic, and again, maybe it's because I have been in this crushing weight of indifference from medical professionals that led me down this just rabbit hole of empathy and fear, and a lot unfolded last week for me. And I got really caught up in comparisons. And I want to be clear about this. I got caught up in comparisons of what we're seeing in immigrant detention centers right now in relation to the years leading up to the Holocaust. Mm. I am in no way comparing the actual Holocaust to what is happening now, because the atrocities still have never been seen. But if you look at the years leading up to the Holocaust, we are scarily on par, if not farther ahead, with the detainees. And I think we saw a lot of what's happening when it happened in Minnesota and Minneapolis. We've seen some other things, but the news has gone quiet for a while. But that doesn't mean...
quiet on immigration.
Quiet on immigration.
Because we've moved to another subject.
We've moved to another subject.
Another hyper subject.
What I've learned is that doesn't mean it's actually stopped. It's actually increased.
Yeah.
So the detainees have actually steadily increased since January. We've had twice as many detainees in this span of time than we did all of 2025. And 2025 on record was the largest year of immigrant detainees. And so I want to be clear about some of these facts too. Only 5% of ICE detainees had violent criminal convictions. 5%. These are hundreds or thousands of, this is, I think,
And
almost
95% of those people are, like, we don't even realize the ripple effect.
So 70% have no criminal conviction or criminal background at all. 70% of the people who are in there are just normal, everyday people.
Yeah.
And we're not looking at immigrants just from Hispanic countries. We've seen ones from Canada being detained.
Yeah.
Like this is critical.
But it doesn't make one right or wrong.
No, it doesn't make one right or wrong. But I want people to understand as people kind of chip away at the reasonings of why people are there. There is no reasoning.
Yeah.
This is, and they're being much more quiet about it as we go on.
Yeah.
And that is the scarier part.
So we were talking about indifference, and then we moved to this. Tell me where they were
This
connected.
is not a move to this.
Okay.
How is this? How do you not see the connection?
I see the connection.
The indifference.
Okay. Yeah.
Is us and people. It's
So in other words, you were saying it feels a little quiet since we're not like Minnesota.
Yeah.
And we don't have some of those other
we don't need to be
protests
Minnesota
right now.
The same amount of people are being taken from Washington.
Yeah.
There were a ton of people taken to Boeing Field just a month ago.
So we're
in
sitting
shackles.
So be careful what indifference we're sitting in.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is the indifferent, and I know when we speak about it, there's not indifference feelings, but not taking action, not keeping this front of mind is indifference in itself.
Yeah. I do have to say one of the things that, we're talking politics now, and I think that's okay. Even though we've tried to keep it at a space, but wait, let me finish because I'm going to talk political. So one thing that's happened in the last couple of weeks is we see the administration denouncing some of the comments of the Pope. And I have to say what I've been encouraged by what the Pope said and the Pope's advocacy for immigration and advocacy for the other is many other Catholics have become more outspoken. It's given a space for Catholics to talk about who Jesus is and how Jesus is caring about the immigrant, caring about the other, using stories like I heard a Catholic talk about the Samaritan story. And so even though you're talking about maybe some of our indifference, because we're not maybe seeing some of the protests that we were seeing before against the National Guards and so forth. I do think...
But even protest isn't enough anymore.
Yeah, I know.
No action.
But I do think there's
difference.
some conversation around how are we stepping in to help. And so that's been encouraging.
But I guess this is what I'm talking about is that is the indifference of we are either seeing it, we're scrolling past it. It was a big news story.
Yeah.
It feels like it's quieted down. It is not quieted down. Understand that the silence is actually scarier.
Yeah.
It's scary. It is getting much bigger and much more problematic than we realize. And so the indifference of inaction is what's call your senators, call your governors.
Go out. I have a really good friend.
But the go out thing is all like, I say go out. I understand people, you don't necessarily know where to go. You don't know what to do. Like you don't, but like there needs to action. And so I have one final fact that is kind of will top off of how terrifying this actually is getting, and we're not hearing about it. As of April 11th this year, 2026, every undocumented person in the US is legally required to register with the federal government. And now that might seem silly because you're like, well, isn't that the point if they're, undocumented? Like, shouldn't.
But it's basically turning everybody
But what's
in.
scary is this law is actually the same law that we used in 1940 to apply to Japanese internment camps. And the law specifically says the purpose is for the government to directly locate, apprehend, and remove the person as quickly as possible. And so the thing is, they're making this illegal, so now they can actually make undocumented immigration illegal. A federal
Yeah, because it was not considered illegal.
No, it was considered a minor offense. It was considered at the same level as a traffic ticket, the same level as if you rolled through a stop
But
sign. Now this law is making it a federal offense, and therefore
have they made the law?
Yeah, April 11th. The reason why this is different, they didn't have to pass it. They just had to reinstate a law from 1940 that hadn't been used since we built it for Japanese internment camps.
One of the things that I wish, and maybe this is something that you and I need to do in doing some research, is to really see, like, I think if our audience, white women, would really see the long-term effects of what does it mean to separate families? What does it mean to single someone out? What does it mean to detain someone? These are really serious long-term.
But it's beyond separating families, too.
Yeah. But I'm just saying the psychological, the sociological effects that this does to someone's being by being singled out like this, by being isolated like this, by being detained, what we're doing to people.
But you have to understand it's beyond that. It's not about just detainment. These detainment centers, these people are in shackles, so they're treated like prisoners, even though, as I said, 70% have no criminal record at all. 70%, and they're sitting in shackles. There's also been a huge measles outbreak. Measles have been eliminated in the U.S. since 2000, but because the detention facilities in Arizona and Texas are so overcrowded and they are not allowing vaccinations, there has been a breakout in measles and then deaths resulting from measles.
Wow.
There's been more deaths in the ICE detainee center than there were during COVID in ICE detainee centers.
Because of measles.
Not just measles, for many different reasons. Because
it's probably overcrowded.
It's overcrowded. It's because of the conditions. There's less food. These are very serious things that we are not hearing about openly. And so this is where I was in this spiral of all of this, trying to get as much information as I could about pre-Holocaust. Like, what did that look like? And I've said this before to friends for years about, like, World War II, in hindsight, we understand. But as things were going on, no one knew what was actually happening.
Yeah.
Even the people living in Germany didn't see the full effect, and they didn't understand until after the war. And I watched a good documentary called Ordinary Men, was about how ordinary men, just everyday men who were not Nazi supporters, how they were drafted into war, and how it's actually like a misunderstanding that there was a thought that these men were basically threatened with their lives, and that's why they killed so many, were so involved in the war.
Yeah.
And actually, this documentary talks about that wasn't true at all. Every Nazi soldier was given the choice. If you did not want to kill someone, you could move to a different part of the army or their, platoon or whatever they're called in the Nazi world. They're sanctioned. But still, and a lot of people did, but a lot of men, ordinary men, due to pressure during false propaganda, doing everything.
Maybe ordinary things like not wanting to move or not wanting to displace their family. Yeah, who knows? I'm just saying, like, you're calling them ordinary men. Maybe they chose to stay in that battalion because they didn't want to move.
These men were already taken away from their family. Like they were already in a different. That's not.
Sorry.
No, I was like, what? Anyways, no. But my point is, it's herd mentality when you're in these spaces when you're feeling, even though there was no actual pressure put on them supposedly, and so it's just again the crushing weight of indifference.
Yeah,
and indifference to me in this is just not being educated in this space, not knowing, not taking action. So do anything you can right now to keep yourself waking up to this topic. This was going to be my full topic for today, but it needs a breath to think on.
I think, Jonelle, what I really appreciate what you're saying is, and I'm thinking about what you said, do whatever you can to wake yourself up to this topic. So I remember when the notion of my bias, my inherited racist bias, my inherited culture started coming through to me and started opening up. I did start like reading more books, watching like the movie 13th Amendment and Wide Awake, all these things. And so and then it does motivate you to start doing some action and movement. So I really appreciate even your call to say, let's wake up. Let's find a way to keep these topics in center.
It's so
even
hard.
If you're like not indifferent when you're at the grocery store, can you listen to someone's story? Can you have appreciation of the hardship of what someone's going through?
And I think we talked a lot last week about how not being indifferent really can hold a heavy weight and make you uncomfortable because you're really opening your eyes to everything and letting that in. And we understand the heavy weight that is, but the importance of what it does for people and community and just all of us when you sit with that heavy weight, and then it allows you to take action on something and allows you to keep learning. And I did have to pause for a moment. I was on a deep dive of documentaries this week of Middle East, Holocaust, like every possible thing to continue to educate myself on everything that's happening, but beyond what I already know and see. And it got really hard and dark. And so you do need to step back, pause, and then think about the action.
Well, I know one of the things I was telling you about, because we've wrote this book, but we haven't edited. I swear the editing is the worst of everything. But, we talk about this discomfort cycle that we just don't want to feel uncomfortable. And you last week were feeling really uncomfortable. And I didn't try to fix it.
No, you didn't like that.
I remember you were uncomfortable, and I was like, that's okay. This is something that we've said that we're going to try to own and or live into, that this awareness can feel very uncomfortable. So,
anyways,
is this your topic?
No, that was not my topic, but it was going to be my topic, but then we have another topic that came up later this week, but it was so heavy, and I just trying to find all the right avenues to discuss. I decided it would be better to just get a couple key points out there, and maybe I'll keep bringing this up in other times, but let people sit on that, let people do their own learning, and
listeners, if you have tangible actions that we can help each other. I mean, we're a collective community.
I know.
And so let us know. Let us know how we can step into this immigration story.
I mean, it's beyond immigration. It's detention centers.
Detention.
It's strong word. It's detention centers. It's internment camps. We are building prisons for innocent people. And that's it. We can't keep calling it an immigration problem. It is not an immigration problem. We are building prisons for innocent people. So on that fun note, everyone, I really cheered you all up today.
It's okay. So, we're strong. We're strong.
So today's topic, which we have a little less time for, it actually came up. So we normally record on Tuesdays, which is when we have book club. because I had a medical procedure this week, we couldn't record on Tuesday. And so it's fun is we get to talk about stuff that came out of book club.
Yay.
this
And
week.
we had
And
a great book club. We read
great
The
book.
Hate You Give.
Oh.
Angie Thomas was it's amazing
Yes,
book.
cannot
So if
recommend
you
it.
did not get to read it, go for it. Put it on your to-do list.
I read it in an afternoon. I know I already said that, but I can't emphasize it enough. I didn't intend to read it in an afternoon, but it just captured me and it was amazing. But the book has to do a lot with code switching.
Yeah.
And so so this is the first time Karen is already aware of the topic because we've already slightly had this conversation.
And it was a great conversation.
Great
Can I say one thing about the book club? One of the things that I felt came out of the book club is we had a community that was shame-free, and we realized that some of the ways that we were using terminology was because of our whiteness or because of where we were framing it. And we were able to dialogue around, wow, that we're educating ourselves. We're doing exactly what this podcast is trying to do, educate our own selves as white women, how we show up in a multiracial society. And so with our inherited bias. And it was a really good place to do that, to have that conversation.
And I really compliment the people who attended.
Yeah.
Because as you kind of said, there were definitely some false understandings, some co-opted definitions that white people co-opted. And people unintentionally, but people could have, as we know, easily been offended or uncomfortable or disrupted by
defensive. It's a very white woman thing to do.
By the correction of the definition. And no one was.
No.
Again, it was a beautiful conversation of openness and
trying to learn.
Yes. So anyways, so we talked about there was a term code switching. This came up in the book. And then we also talked about masking and kind of the differences. So I'm going to be clear right now, read definitions from them, and then we'll kind of get into, for the few minutes we have left, a little bit of history around this stuff. So code switching. Code switching is the practice of shifting your language, tone, behavior, or presentation depending on who you're around. This is specifically the shift when it's driven by survival. Mm-hmm. So that is a key point, not a preference, but survival. So this really relates to people of color. For Black people in particular, code switching was an ongoing work of adjusting how you speak, move, and show up in white-dominated spaces to perceived as safe, professional, or accepted. And it's actually rooted all the way back to enslaved Africans.
Wow.
Who blended language to communicate with each other in other ways their enslavers couldn't understand. Mm. It was not a communication style. It was actually a survival technique. Mm. And then the key thing is there's a ton of documented costs to mental health, identity, and sense of self. So not only are we putting this oppressive system on the world of people of color, but it's also adding another tax, another layer of mental health, identity, self issues. And so
can I speak into that?
Yeah.
One of the reasons I'm slower and I like Jonelle, I had to go look up patriarchy because sometimes I attach it just to an individual man. And Jonelle reminded me that patriarchy is about a social system that allows men to dominate. So this is why definitions matter. So I've always been a little, code switching is kind of the language doesn't feel confusing, but I didn't because I'm not, I'm not a person of color.
Yeah.
And we later learned that the white language for that might be flexing my personality. I might switch my personality around. But why we talked about code switching is this book did such a beautiful job articulating what code switching is.
Yeah.
So the main character, Star, when she's in the space of, as a Black woman, when she's in the space of the white dominant school, she acts a certain way. And even though that certain way is somewhat her, because she wasn't not completely that person, but she acts another way when she's at home in Garden Heights, and they're pretty extreme. And so this book really allowed us to see how she was using both languages
Yeah.
to survive differently in both spaces. She did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would argue a little bit, though, that, as you said, it was still her. But I think the point coming up, it fractures yourself.
Yes.
So you don't even really know
It didn't
who you
allow
are
her
anymore.
to be actually her authentic self because she was going back and forth in both spaces.
But what I'm trying to say off of yours is neither space was her authentic self.
Yeah.
And she also is not allowed the privilege of even knowing who her authentic self was.
Yes.
And so, kind of like you were saying, is like she was herself, but this is the whole harm around it.
Yeah.
And so, like, I mean,
and they did such a beautiful job because in each community, she was struggling with her self-identification.
Yeah.
And how this weighed on her so much that she felt like in the book, she could not even like align herself with people that she loved. She loved the main character who was Kurt, and yet she didn't feel like she could always defend that character.
Yeah.
And so it was really beautifully defined for me what code switching does and how one can be hurt by code switching.
Yeah. No, it is a pretty, it is, where was it? So code switching, they say, is not a superpower. A lot of white people have then alluded that it's this amazing superpower that people have, this social gift. But actually, code switching is not a superpower. The research shows that 1 in 5 Black employees say code switching has had a negative impact on their mental health.
Yeah.
The American Psychological Association links the chronic stress of code switching to higher rates of burnout in disadvantaged groups. Research shows it depletes cognitive resources, reduces authentic self-expression, and contributes to identity fragmentation.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I was talking about, is you just lose your sense of self. The Harvard Business Review documented in 2019 that Black employees who code switch to fit in perceive that they're actually being devalued in life. And they reduce their commitment to the organization as a result, and overall suffer from lower self-esteem.
Yeah.
And so it is like, I love that fragmentation of themselves. And what I mean,
I love the word devalue that you had presented in there because, just using the book as an example and this character as an example, because that's what we were talking about. There were really episodes of low self-esteem for this main character, Star, because she was not able to state out loud what she valued, what mattered to her. And we know, talk about indifference, talk about like what we can experience when we put people in this language of not being able to be authentic, not being able to share their values. We really hurt others, really hurt others. So I love that that's in that definition, devalue. And we do it to ourselves. That's what's like, not that we do it. Wait, sorry, I did that wrong. That the result of that is we end up devaluing ourselves, which in fact, the world has put that on you by making you do these spaces of code switching.
Yes. Now, the next term that is been co-opted more recently than code switching is masking. And so masking has been a new term that people have been discussing around, when a lot of people are saying within this political climate, they have to mask their true self in front of their family members that might have a different political association than them. But actually, masking comes from the autistic community, and it describes, it is basically unintentional actions. Wait, let me find this. I want to be very clear on my definition, and I lost it. So it's a term for the autistic and neurodivergent community that describes the conscious or unconscious suppression of traits like stimming, sensory responses, communication differences, or emotional expression in order to appear neurotypical and avoid exclusion punishment. And so again, these are very two different points. Code switching is about actual survival, and masking is about, an unconscious attempt from neurodivergent people.
Well, it's also survival too, because you don't want to be excluded. I mean, part of being a human being is being in community.
Yes.
And so if you're unconsciously masking behaviors that are not normative, you can feel left out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things that came about, and I don't know if this is, I'm jumping into your summary.
No, go for it.
But one of the things that came about in the book club is this idea that we as a white community have co-opted some really important terms for communities that have been othered.
Yeah.
So we have co-opted the code switching term, and we have co-opted the masking term.
We've co-opted OCD.
Yeah.
That's another big one that people who just clean or like orderly things co-opt OCD. But as we know, with people with actual severe OCD, it is a very overpowering diagnosis.
Yeah.
It is beyond just needing cleanliness or order.
So it's funny that you're bringing this up, because the truth is we've done this for so many years. We do it for the word depression. I remember I would say to my friends I was depressed, and one of my friends was really offended by that, because this particular friend,
great example,
is diagnosed with depression and can go down very deep, dark holes.
Yes.
And so I think one of the things that we came about, and what was really great about the book club, is that as a community, instead of being afraid that we were doing something wrong, we didn't shame each other. We just said, well, what could be a definition that we should use? So for example, like depression, maybe saying, I'm sad. I'm just sad.
I mean, there
or
are,
like you said with code switching, maybe the word is, I'm flexing my personality in order to fit in order to adjust, because we all do that.
Yeah.
We all have to adjust the way that we enter rooms based on the context of the space.
Correct.
I act differently often in front of my students than I do at home, hanging out in my jammies with my puppy dog, right? And so but instead of using the language of I'm code switching, because of course neither one are threatening my survival, how do I use language that is more specific to what it is my action is happening?
I would even say accurate, not even specific, accurate. I think a great point is
accuracy is tough, because
accuracy is not tough if you understand words.
I know, but for me, accuracy is a little tough because I might not know the actual definition. And so maybe spending time to defining my feelings, like instead of using like actual terms that are diagnoses and things like that.
I think ding, ding, ding. I think this is, again, part of the privilege of whiteness is being able to co-op and just take things without digging into them.
Yes.
And so encouragement is to dig in and do research before really understand the words, because they do say language co-option actively harms people who truly need these words for survival. These
To
words were built for
define.
survival because it trivializes the painful experiences. It reinforces stigma. It can actually discourage people from seeking help. And then once they do seek help, it actually minimizes often their diagnosis because it's now taken less clinically severe.
Yeah.
Because everyone is using it more and more.
Yeah.
And so I think
So we neutralize it.
We
like
neutralize
we've
it.
neutralized the word depression.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, depression,
And I
OCD.
do remember, speaking of which, I do remember when I used to throw out that word loosely.
Yeah.
And then I realized I'm actually not even spending time to get to know the actual emotion because I'm bandaging it in this one big word.
Exactly.
And so when I stopped trying to use it, and I would say, I'm sad, I'm fearful, I'm
Yep.
grieving, I would define the feelings rather than that big word. And so, same thing with something like code switching, where it's actually about survival. Can I use words that talk about, wow, I've kind of like flexed, or
Yeah.
I've adjusted.
Adapted.
I've adapted to these spaces so that I'm actually really saying what it is that I've done into those spaces of time.
And now I want to be clear, the answer is not to police language.
Yeah.
Because policing language also doesn't help because someone truly could be masking and they could. And so it's more about how do you use precise and accurate language that describes your situation.
Yeah.
Not others, but your situation.
Yeah. Well,
so like you were talking about, do you adjust your professional setting? And so instead of I communicate more formally at work. That is a fair assessment.
Yeah.
You know, I'm introverted and socializing drains you. That doesn't mean that you're masking. It just means you're an introvert, you know?
Yeah.
There's plenty of ways to frame things to be more accurately, to accurately
and also
what's happening for
with
you.
hope that you're not triggering people that are actually experiencing the depth of some of this terminology.
Yeah. Well, and we've even talked about that because I've been very aware on, like, again, friends who suffer from depression, and you talk, and every time I would get sad, you would ask me, are you depressed? And the thing is, I've known forever, I am not a depressive person. I don't have depression. I'm very lucky I don't have that. And so I'm very clear to not use those words when I have times of sadness. Like last week, there were a lot of words, but I was not depressed. I was sad. I was scared. I was, anxious. I do suffer from anxiety, but I was not depressed. And again, it's just really getting in touch with the accurate feelings and paying attention to, honestly, those who experience the words that were built to name them.
Yeah.
And really understanding and seeing the difference between what they're living day to day and what you're living day to day. And just you don't have to be perfect. It's not about perfection, but just be practical.
And I love, and this is one of the things that I loved that book. So for me, I now am able to really see what this word code switching means in a clearer light, and to see that the damage it does. This is what that book did for me. And now when I hear that from my Black friends or within a BIPOC community, I think I have a clear understanding of what it is that they're describing. They're not just describing my adjustment of how I have to adjust a personality. They're describing something that is possibly life-threatening, is seriously devaluing, and those sorts of experiences. Yeah. Yeah. Learning.
that.
Learning. Yes. Okay. We went way over, but that's okay. Thank you for joining us on White Women Wake Up. We hope today's conversation sparks something in you, whether it's reflection, a new question, or a deeper commitment to showing up with empathy and accountability. If you found this episode meaningful, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. You can also connect with us on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Substack, or at hello@whitewomenwakeup.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts and keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay curious, be open, and let's keep waking up together. Bye.
Okay, but before we go, a quick playback on today's sources. The history of code switching as a survival strategy for Black Americans is documented in Yes Magazine, as well as the Britannica Linguistics entry. The 1 in 5 mental health impact stat comes from an Indeed survey published in Fortune in February 2024. The research linking autistic masking to depression, burnout, and suicide comes from a peer-reviewed study in the Journal of Psychology, published in 2022. The clinical origin of the term masking goes back to researcher Lorna Wing in 1981, and the New England Journal of Medicine documented code switching among Black medical professionals in 2021. And the harm of casual mental health language misuse is from Psychology Today, January 2023. All of these sources will be linked in our upcoming Substack post, and please keep waking up. Bye.